This is Mrs. Wainwright's math class, chapters 6, 7, 8, Packet D, lesson 3, finding equivalent fractions with common denominators using the LCD. Today's learning target, I can use the LCD to find equivalent fractions with common denominators. We have various vocabulary terms today, many of which are review. The first word is equivalent. Equivalent means equal or the same. Next, we have the term equivalent fractions. Equivalent are fractions that may look different, but are actually the same amount. They are equal. An example might be 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4 and is also equivalent to 4/8. They look different, but they're actually all equal to 1/2 of that chocolate bar. Our next word is numerator. And remember, the numerator is the top number in a fraction. Then we have denominator, which is the bottom number in the fraction. Remember, denominator, D for the down number. And finally, we have common, which means the same. So we need to have knowledge of all of these words for this lesson. So what's the reason for this lesson? Why are we even learning this? Well, sometimes we need to add or subtract fractions. Let's say Mrs. Wainwright has 2/4 of a Hershey bar, and Mrs. Castellano has 5/6 of a Hershey bar. If we put it together, how much chocolate do we have all together? We would need to add those fractions. But the problem is, you can only add or subtract fractions if the fractions have the exact same denominators. Therefore, we need to learn how to find equivalent fractions so we don't change the value of what we were given. We need to find those equivalent fractions with common denominators so that their denominator is now the same and we can go ahead and add or subtract the fraction. Let's take a look at example number 1 to find out how to find equivalent fractions with common denominators. Question number 1 says write equivalent fractions for 1/4 and 1/6 using the LCD. LCD is least common denominator. So I'm going to make the denominators the same by finding the least common denominator. First thing I need to do when I have to find equivalent fractions is to set myself up. How do I do that? I write the first fraction with the window box next to it. Yes, you must use the window box. I make an equal sign because I have to have the equal sign, and I know I'm going to have a new fraction, so I give myself the new fraction bar. That's my setup for 1/4. I take the next fraction and write it right underneath 1/6, give myself a window box with an equal sign to set myself up for my new answer, and a fraction bar. Now that I have my setup, I can go ahead and do the work. Now remember, they want me to find equivalent fractions using the LCD. That's the least common denominator. So I'm going to find the denominator of my first fraction, which is 4, the denominator of my second fraction, which is 6. And we know that LCD is the same thing as LCM, so really I want the LCM for 4 and 6. We know that we write the largest number first because that makes it the fastest way to solve it. And I'm going to go through my 6 times table. 6. Is that a multiple of 4? Do I say 6 when I go through my 4 times tables? 4, 8, no. What comes after 6? 12. 4, 8, 12. Yes, I do say 12. So my LCM or my LCD is 12. I take that LCD, and that's going to be the new denominator for my fractions. It's going to be the common denominator. So that's my LCM or my LCD, and that's going to be the denominator for each of my new final answer fractions. Go ahead and put that in up here and down there. So now let's take a look at our top fraction. I have 1/4 with a window box equals blank 12ths. Look at what I know. I know that I have to turn my denominator of 4 into a 12. What do I have to do to a 4 to turn it into a 12? Would I multiply it by something or divide it by something? Well, I want my 4 to get larger, so I'm going to have to multiply it by something. So what can I multiply 4 times to get 12? Well, 4 times 3 equals 12. And that's true, right? 4 times 3 equals 12. Okay. So remember, with a window box, whatever I do on the top, I have to do on the bottom, or vice versa. Whatever I do on the bottom, I have to do on the top. So if I said times 3 on the bottom, I have to say times 3 on the top. It's the only way that it makes my window box equivalent to 1. So now I go ahead and solve. What's 1 times 3? 3. So 1/4 has turned into 3/12. Let's take a look at my next fraction. I have 1/6 and I need to turn my denominator into a 12. What do I do to a 6 to turn it into a 12? Multiply or divide? It has to be larger, therefore I must multiply. So 6 times what equals 12? 6 times 2 equals 12. And remember, in a window box, whatever I do in one section, I have to do the same thing in the other section. So if I said times 2 on the bottom, I have to say times 2 on the top. What's 1 times 2? 2. So 1/6 has turned into 2/12. So now my equivalent fractions for 1/4 and 1/6 using the LCD are 3/12 and 2/12. Notice that my new answers have the same common denominator of 12. That's what I wanted them to have. And my top fraction, 3/12, is equivalent to what I started with, 1/4. My bottom fraction, 2/12, is equivalent to what I started with, 1/6. So these are equivalent fractions using the LCD. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 1 right now. Another way that you might see the question worded is shown in question number 2. It says write equivalent fractions with common denominators for 1/3, 2/9, and 3/4. Hey, this time I have 3 fractions, but that's okay. I'm going to solve it the same way. First thing I do is my setup. Take the first fraction they gave me, 1/3, give myself a window box, remember not too squishy, an equal sign, and a new fraction bar. Underneath that, I'll put the next fraction they give me, 2/9, a window box, not too squishy, an equal sign, and a new fraction bar. I'll take the last fraction they gave me underneath that, 3/4, a window box, an equal sign, and a fraction bar. Now I have my setup. I have to go back and look at all of my denominators, because to find equivalent fractions with common denominators, I need to find the LCM or LCD. So my denominators are 3, 9, and 4. Remember, I'm going to write these down from top to bottom, and it's best to start with my largest number first. So I have my 9, then my 4, and then my 3. Let's go through the 9 times tables. 9. When I go through my 4 times tables, do I say 9? 4, 8, 12? No. So 3 can't be the answer. I'll just put a line through it. What comes after 9? 18. When I go through my 4 times tables, do I say 18? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20? No. So cross out the 3. 9, 18, what comes next? 27. When I go through my 4 times tables, do I say 27? No. Cross out the 3. What comes after 27? 36. When I go through my 4 times tables, do I say 36? Yes, I do. Well, then when I go through my 3 times tables, do I say 36? Yes, I do, because 3 times 12 is 36. So yes, I do. Therefore, 36 is my LCD or my LCM. That's going to be the new denominator for each of my fractions, because it's my least common denominator. So I'll write my 36 in for each fraction. Now let's go ahead and figure it out. I'll look at my top fraction. What do I do to the 3 to turn it into a 36? Well, I need to make 3 larger, so that right away means I need to multiply. And 3 times what is 36? Well, you can go through your multiples, and 3 times 12 is 36. Remember, whatever I do on the bottom of the window box, I must do on the top of the window box. So if I said times 12 on the bottom, I must say times 12 on the top. Solve that problem. What's 1 times 12? 12. So 1/3 is equivalent to 12/36. Let's look down at my next fraction, 2/9. What do I do to the 9 to turn it into a 36? We'll be making it bigger, so that means multiply. And 9 times what is 36? 9 times 4 is 36. Whatever I do to the bottom of the window box, I must do to the top of the window box. I said times 4 on the bottom, so I have to say times 4 on the top. Solve. 2 times 4 equals 8. So 2/9 is equivalent to 8/36. Let's look at my last fraction, 3/4. Well, what do I do to a 4 to turn it into a 36? I'm making it larger, so I have to multiply. 4 times what equals 36? 4 times 9 equals 36. Whatever I do in the bottom of the window box, I must do on the top of the window box, so I have to put a times 9. And what's 3 times 9? 27. So 3/4 is equivalent to 27/36. I wrote fractions that were equivalent to my original fractions, and each of them have the same common denominator of 36. 12/36, 8/36, and 27/36. And those are my final answers. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 2 right now. So let's review. Equivalent means equal or the same. Equivalent fractions are fractions that may look different but are actually the same amount. They're equal to the original fraction that you started with. Numerator is the top number in a fraction, denominator is the bottom number in the fraction, and common means the same. Sometimes we need to add or subtract fractions, but you can only do that if the denominators are identical. They're exactly the same. So therefore we need to learn this lesson to find equivalent fractions with common denominators. So remember, the first thing we do on the left-hand side is our setup. We take the fraction with a window box, an equal sign, and a fraction bar. And underneath it, we do the same thing with the next fraction. Fraction, window box, equal sign, fraction bar. We focus in on the denominators, and we find the LCD or the LCM of all of the given denominators. In this case, it was 12. We take that LCM or LCD, and that becomes the denominator of all of the new fractions. So we put that in on the bottom of all of the new fraction bars. Go back, look at the math, and figure out what you need to do to the denominator to change it to that new denominator. For 1/4, I had to multiply it by 3. Whatever you did on the bottom, you need to do on the top. So you solve it, and that gives you the new numerator. So in the end, all of your new fractions should have the same denominator, but they should be equivalent to the original fraction you started with. And how do you know that you're keeping it equivalent? Because whatever you're multiplying or dividing it by, it's the same number on both the top and bottom of your window box, meaning that you're multiplying it by 1 or dividing it by 1, whatever you needed to do. Hopefully by now you can confidently say, I can use the LCD to find equivalent fractions with common denominators. Again, we will be practicing in class. If you get stuck or have any questions, please make sure you see a teacher and we will help you with it. Good luck with this lesson.